союзников из числа сирийской оппозиции в подготовке новой провокации. Об этом сегодня заявила официальный представитель МИДа Мария Захарова. Есть конкретные данные о попытках инсценировки химической атаки в двух сирийских населенных пунктах – Сарракаб и Ариха. Сценарий хорошо известен по апрельской провокации в Идлибе. Позже ее использовали как предлог для ракетного удара по аэродрому Шайрат. На этот раз, по данным российского МИДа, готовится то же самое.
В западной публике будут демонстрироваться некие доказательства. Это могут быть воронки, это могут быть некие мутные скачущие кадры, которые якобы были сняты во время инцидента. Огромное распространение в социальных сетях получат фотографии трупов людей. Цель очевидна – реанимировать тему так называемых преступлений режима, подорвать начатый в Астане политический процесс, вернуть ситуацию в Сирии в тот самый тупик, куда ее и завела риторика Запада о том, что Асад должен уйти.
Эффектные съемки провокации, по словам Захаровой, готовы, а последующие шаги Вашингтона просчитаны. Апрельский удар по Сирии уже привел к росту личного рейтинга Трампа. В Москве подобные действия США оценивают не только как антисирийские, но и как антироссийские. Новая администрация Белого дома пользуется старым сценарием, придуманным еще при Обаме в 2013 году.
The Syrian government is preparing to use chemical weapons. Damascus says the US is refusing to investigate the previous such incident. According to Syria's foreign ministry, Washington opposed sending international experts to key sites linked to a chemical attack that took place in April. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons carried out a remote investigation and concluded that sarin gas had been used. The OPCW did not assign blame for the attack, but the US pointed the finger at Damascus and bombed a Syrian military base. Here's Syrian journalist Ala Ibrahim.
Damascus is dissatisfied with the results and the findings of the OPCW probe into the alleged chemical weapons used in Khan Sheikhoun in April this year. The Syrian government said that most of the investigation was carried out in Turkey through the help of Turkish mediators, which, according to the Syrian government, compromises the integrity of that report, taking into consideration that Turkey has been hostile towards the Syrian government and has actually made every effort possible to topple the government of President Bashar al-Assad. The Syrian officials also said that they have communicated repeatedly with the OPCW and that the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons have told the Syrian government that they are unable, the international organization is unable to visit Khan Sheikhoun and carry out the investigation firsthand, and later on became dependent on samples delivered to them in Turkey, and also testimonies by eyewitnesses who went to them in Turkey from Khan Sheikhoun and had arranged for eyewitness accounts to meet actually with investigators from the OPCW in Damascus, but according to the Syrian government, these samples and these testimonies were not reflected in the final report that was published by the OPCW. Also, the other important issue that was raised by Damascus, that all the chemical weapons that Syria used to have were destroyed under the supervision of the international organization, and they were destroyed abroad to prevent any future claim that Syria has kept part of these weapons inside Syrian territories for future use. And the last actually point that the Syrian Deputy Foreign Minister Faisal Muqdad said is that if the United States decides to carry out an act of aggression against Damascus, it should not only consider the reaction of Damascus, but also any repercussions that could happen from other reactions from allies of Syria, including Russia and other allies. And I think he was...
A social media campaign aimed at smearing the Syrian government. Spokeswoman Maria Zakharova condemned videos circulating online claiming to show the aftermath of another supposed chemical weapons attack by Damascus. Peace researcher Jan Oberg says the Syrian government isn't being given the benefit of the doubt in the West.
Mainstream media, the large media that are influencing the Western decision-making process and the citizens' opinion about this. You take the case, for instance, of the totally black picture that is painted of Bashar al-Assad. Now, nobody can be as evil as he's been made in the Western world. It is very
military vessels and fighter jets to warn off a U.S. warship that sailed near a disputed island in the South China Sea. The Foreign Ministry criticized the U.S. for infringing China's sovereignty. Beijing stressed that the move was in violation of international law and a serious political and military provocation. The Chinese government further urged the White House to immediately stop its provocative and threatening operations throughout the region. Beijing further reiterated that it will exert all efforts to defend its national sovereignty and security. Comments came after an American missile destroyer entered China's territorial waters off the Xisha Islands without Beijing's approval. And I'm going to swing over to Mr. Mike Billington out of Leesburg, from the Executive Intelligence Review. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us back on the program. And this isn't the only altercation that, I wouldn't call it an altercation, but there have been some political moves in the last couple of weeks that have really put Beijing on edge. Your thoughts, please.
I wouldn't take this too seriously. Trump likes to take a strong posture in his bargaining. Same thing with North Korea. He's taken very tough public stances on North Korea. But in both cases, North Korea and the South China Sea with China, Trump is working very closely with Xi Jinping. He's going to be meeting in a bilateral meeting with Xi Jinping when he goes to the G20 meeting in Hamburg this week. He'll also be meeting with Putin. Putin and China, Russia and China are working extremely closely on all strategic, economic, and global policies. And I think at this point, the fact, for instance, on the Korea issue, that Trump, while striking a tough posture, acknowledged the new president, Moon Jae-in, who wants a new sunshine policy with the North and wants to work with Russia and China, acknowledged that he should be taking the lead in the Korea issue. I think here, too, some of the military people around Trump who want confrontation, he grants them minor concessions like the so-called freedom of information policies. But on the broader question, he's committed to working closely with Russia and China. This is the most important strategic issue in history in the modern era. If Putin and Xi Jinping succeed over these next week, especially with the G20 meeting and the bilateral meetings with Trump, in creating a kind of alliance between Russia and China and India for economic development, for strategic collaboration against terrorism, we're dealing with a new world, a world that, as Mr. and Mrs. LaRouche have insisted, a world that could end the British imperial ideology of East versus West, perpetual warfare, colonial-style warfare could be ended forever. We're at a turning point in history. The Trump administration is under attack, not because of all these silly things that you see in the press, but precisely because he is building a strong alliance with the Russian and Chinese leadership.
But exactly, Mr. Billington, he speaks highly of Xi Jinping, but at the same time, he let these sanctions go through against some banks and entities there in China. He's kind of violated the One China rule policy. He's over, warming up to Taiwan, selling them over $1 billion in weapons over the next couple of years. And now with what we're seeing, South China Sea. So it's almost like we're getting a mixed message. When you say
it's mixed, but it's not really mixed. Every administration has continued selling weapons to Taiwan. The Chinese will, of course, respond. But again, these are minor pinpricks compared to the global strategic situation. We had under Obama the threat of global war with Russia and China. We had a confrontation in the South China Sea. We had confrontations with Russia on the border both in Europe and in Asia. And some of these confrontations are continuing under the Trump administration with leftovers from the Obama time. But again, we are looking at a historic week ahead. The coming meeting between Trump and Putin, and also Trump and Xi Jinping, and between Xi Jinping and Putin. In fact, Xi Jinping is going to Russia before he goes to the G20 meeting in Hamburg. We're dealing with a potential for a strategic shift in history, where the U.S. and Russia and China, and India as well, can be brought together to once and for all defeat this imperial division of the world, to bring about a cooperation on global economic development with the new Silk Road with China, and with the war on terrorism with Russia. So I'm not forecasting that this is going to work beautifully, but we're in a potentially historic transformation of history, and that's the way you have to look at all of these individual issues, not within the apparent confrontation that is going to be played up by the Western media in order to try to prevent Trump from working closely with Russia and China.
Thank you, Mr. Billington, for that encouraging optimism that you